Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here, back in the same room. That doesn't matter to you, but it matters to us.
Yeah, this is crazy.
And this is season 5, episode...
Crazy good.
Yeah, this is season 5, episode 7 of our weekly Q&C&A&T videos. Yeah, remembering... See, we can actually say things at the same time now.
Yeah, and not have to post-edit them.
Yeah, and also be a lot less worried about us, talking over each other by accident,
right. Yep.
because we're not actually talking over each other.
We do, it's intentional, and we're totally aware of it.
Yeah, but we can now sometimes talk over each other by accident when we're actually not talking over each other.
Yeah.
when we're having the conversation. But anyways, that has nothing to do with the video that you're watching other than maybe minor quality. Let's look at the questions. This is the talking part of it. Let's get into a question. And this comes from Electro Strikes. And there's a couple questions here, and I think we're just going to be addressing one as kind of a jumping off point just to talk. They say 2 questions and a recommendation. 1, is there a way to make Rebirth Green Arrow good? 2, can you make a video about a Rebirth team? Recommendation, Eddy G for gameplay on your Q&A&T and C. And that almost messed me up because I almost went to that when I was worried about stumbling, and I almost said the order wrong. But we're going to talk briefly, maybe.
Let me get through the first 2 quickly. All right, so I when I screwed up last week with the recap, I was talking about Rebirth Green Arrow. I mean, there's lots of ways to make characters good, but to make them great, I'm not necessarily a big fan of Rebirth Green Arrow, mainly because he doesn't have a great passive. No matter how good he plays, if the passive isn't useful. I mean, he's got good enough stats, and he's quick enough that you could basically use him for any of the generic kind of ideals. So, like a tank, you can make him good tank, you can make him good basic damage dealer, you can make him good specialist because his special 2 is decent. So it's really just the same way we geared up our... You could gear him up like we gear up our... Flashpoint team, where we have sort of the classic of each.
Yeah, and the real problem is that basically how they play, how quick they are, how easy they are for you to pick up, and how good their passive is are the only 2 things that you can really make a character a lot better or a lot worse than other characters, because a character with a good passive basically has an extra gear.
Yes, and sometimes even better.
Yeah.
But you wanted to... So, are we going to be doing a Rebirth team? I guess it depends. I've got a few other ideas for teams in mind, because part of it will be we have to play with it enough to get a feel for it and to make the adjustments. You start off with a basic idea of how you want the team to play. And I think we've got a few Rebirth teams, and maybe I'll take a look through the list of videos we've already done.
Yeah.
I think we've got a few Rebirth teams already, but maybe not. I think we might have broken up, because the problem with the Rebirth synergies is none of them are that great. So, for example, Jessica Cruz, she gets as good with Green Lanterns. Rebirth Raven, her passive doesn't care about anybody else.
Yeah.
It's very personal to steal energy. So we'll think about it, but it might be a ways away. And I guess the best part of the question is what you want to
And
get
I
to.
think there's another best part of the question, which I think is really funny, which is the way that it's been delineated, right? They've specifically said 2 questions in a recommendation. And then the second question is, can you make a team? So the fact that that's a question, not a recommendation, obviously this isn't what they meant. It was very clear what they meant. And it was a well-formatted question itself.
Yes.
But our answer could just be, no. And then
oh yeah, but that was so mean.
Yeah, no. Obviously that's not what they meant, and it wouldn't be a good one.
Right.
But asking it like a question and not like a recommendation of make a video for this, right?
Yeah.
The fact that it was actually asking us and not compelling us to make this piece of content.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually the better way to do it.
That's very respectful.
Yeah. And because it was so respectful and it was actually really good and I appreciated it.
I'm thinking seriously about doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also made it easier to not just be like, no, moving on, right?
Right.
Yeah, and as far as adding the G, I think that's funny because we were joking about adding new letters, but we didn't actually have any ideas to add for new letters. So this is...
And I don't think we have the mental capacity to remember all the new letters when we've added them, not to screw up every week and say something wrong.
Yeah, so the problem is 4 letters is pretty much... I am pretty much maxed out my mental...
Oh, is it like... Alright, so like phone numbers, where there's a limit to how many numbers you can remember easily? So, the 7 used to be really easy. Now we're up to 10, right? Because now you need the area code when you're dialing. But I think for letters, for video, I think, it's 4 is pretty tight.
Yeah, so we might have more, and this is interesting. It's definitely not something that we can repeat forever unless we start writing it down.
Yeah.
And even then, at a certain point, the length, it'll depend on whether people actually want to hear us go through a bunch of letters. And you can let us know in the comments, and this is something else that you can let us know in the comments, if you have any suggestions for things that we could add. And what I want to be clear here, that we're not necessarily going to take recommendations for this, because we're not sure.
But I think it'd be an interesting conversation.
If we do, it's not necessarily now or soon. I'm just saying, personally, for me, and for any of you guys who want to exercise your creativity, in the comments, something that we could add as an extra letter would be fun. I would enjoy reading that. So that's kind of a selfish thing, and you might not, even if it's a great suggestion, we might not end up adding it just for, basically for me. It's basically an entirely selfish thing, because I don't want to have to remember too many letters. But I like the idea of the recommendation. So I want to thank Electrostrikes for the question in a couple different ways. There we go. Our next one comes from AwesomeGamer241, and they say, BDCKR Gaming, can you do a new full Survivor run? I feel like your old method is a bit outdated because of gears and characters. Thank you. And thank you for the question.
Yeah, 2 for 1. It's like 2 for 1. Like pizza. There was a pizza store that used to do, like, they were called 2 for 1. I wonder if that's an allusion to that. Oh, this is going to be a fun fight because of lack of crit. And lack of stun doesn't matter as much, but lack of crit's going to make a big difference, and this is probably going to be a longer fight. So yeah, you're right. Actually, it's not so much that the gears, because of new gears and new characters, that makes it outdated. It's really that the passive for reverse flash has been not changed, but I guess they fixed the original error where reverse flash was getting a nice speed boost from special 1.
Yeah.
And it made it much easier to do that stun lock where you could just juggle them indefinitely.
Yeah, so it's not viable the same way anymore.
Right, so it becomes much more random in terms of the last fight, I guess, for how often or the timing of when they randomly tag you in and out.
Yeah.
So the problem with doing Survivor is it takes a good amount of time. We've said a bunch of times before, and even on that, I think that Survivor run, that most of the time it's not worth the time to do it.
Yeah.
But we wanted to do it just to show that we could.
And the kind of content that we had during it, where we just kind of talked while we were playing through it and we didn't always have something new to say, it's kind of what we're doing here now.
Yeah.
So it feels like, as a video, at the time that we made it, there was more value to having a really long video that we could kind of just say whatever during. Yeah. And it really felt kind of like closer to like a marathon-length video.
Oh, can I point out too? This is very rarely do we get to see a demonstration of why New 52 Superman is great geared out like this as a last man standing. He's only got the passive triggered once for his damage, but he's already doing pretty good, and his energy should come up soonish. He should be close to his 4th bar. There we go.
Rage of Krypton.
And see how little damage he's taking, which makes him a great
tank and damage dealer.
Right. So for that kind of attrition where you're just basically trying to wait out the opponent, like, seriously, he did a special 1 and he does less damage with that than we did with 1 swipe attack. We did more than twice as much damage with 1 swipe attack, so there you go. So I think the point of the Survivor run is that it's a huge time commitment,
and it doesn't actually make sense to do it. It's more of like a prove you did it thing.
Yeah, I think maybe if there's a time where I'm really bored and I've got a lot of... Because now I have to go back and look at which levels have which restrictions to make the right adjustments before each fight, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of time, and I guess I'm going to have to do enough runs, because even when the reverse flash was working, it wasn't a guaranteed win every time. So maybe, but I think unlikely, just because... Not because of the game, but because of where we are and because of how much time it takes. I think our strategy would definitely be different.
Yeah, the cost-value analysis on making that video isn't great.
Yeah. I think what I would use more is I'd probably use a tank that could really eat everything. Like with the same loadout that we got, say, for New 52 Superman. Yeah. I'd probably be using Batman. My plan would be to start with at least Batman Ninja Batman, to use a special 2 that does a huge amount of damage because it stuns. But then I'd have to figure out something around the levels where the special 2 is disabled. Maybe have Batgirl's back. I'd have to think it through. Maybe Luchador Bane, something like that.
Yeah, but the idea is that it if we started making the video now, it would still be a while before it came out, and we're not starting to make the video now at the very least.
That's right. At least at this time in our lives, I think we just don't have the time to do all the work that it would take to get to the point to be ready to make a video.
For the on-screen time
versus
the amount of effort that would have to go into it off-screen, it doesn't seem like a huge return on investment.
Right.
Yeah. There we go. Our next question comes from Colonel Sanders. It's so nice of them to stop by. I was going to say him, but I realized that the Colonel Sanders has been reimagined, and I'm pretty sure...
He?
Yeah, there was like an ad. There was an ad campaign, which different people took over the Colonel, and I think there was a lot of like celebrities and comedians and stuff. And I'm pretty sure at least one of the Colonel iterations was not.
Isn't he dead? Is this like Doctor Who, where he just gets resurrected?
I don't think Colonel Sanders was ever alive. Was he?
Yeah, he was. He was a real person.
Yeah.
So he actually had the original. He had the first Kentucky Fried Chicken. He sold out to whatever corporation did it, and then at the end of it, he was really not happy with how they were making the chicken. So I think he was publicly disparaging of the new Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like, the chicken was not as good as what he used to do.
Oh, that's weird. I thought it was like how McDonald's wasn't actually created by
a clown,
big
with
clown man. Yeah, it was created by two brothers, I think.
All right, so but he actually died. I think I want to say in the 90s.
Oh wow!
But maybe like late 80s or early 90s. But I'm not 100% sure. But I remember it was sort of significant, right? Because he was actually, like how Wendy's that was the daughter of Dave Thomas.
Yeah, and then there's actually a Wendy.
There's actually a Wendy.
It's disappointing that they felt the need to recast Wendy as somebody like younger, and I think it was implied more attractive.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it feels really kind of mean, right?
But I think she showed up in the videos though.
She showed up. I saw like one ad, but you know how there's like a Wendy's Wendy now, right? There's like an actual person that's supposed to be Wendy.
I was not aware.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they were doing that.
Yeah, no. Okay. So the real actual Wendy showed up in an ad, but in most of the ad campaigns that have a Wendy, it's like another one of those things where like. TV has been cast as like a young, like thin.
Right, that was one where they had the brioche buns. Okay.
And a lot of other ones. Yeah. Right, so that's what I'm saying. It feels almost cruel to me.
Right.
You know, and I don't know how much Wendy had like a choice in the matter. I hope that it was
her choice and not
Wendy's
forced upon
decision.
her.
Yeah.
Did you read the question or did you just read the name?
We've just read the name.
Okay.
So thank you, Colonel Sanders, for your name submission. We're not going to read your question.
I think we're going to read.
No, we're going to read the question. They say, "Hey, VDC Car Gaming, what would be the best multiplayer team and gears for them? I'm deciding what team I should stick with for the long run. My current team is Metahuman Flash, Arkham Knight Batgirl, and Arkham Knight Harley Quinn. Thank you, Colonel Sanders. I'm a big fan of your chicken."
I used to like it a lot more. I think I don't know if it's my palate or whether they've changed a secret recipe.
Yeah, I'm actually lying. I much prefer Popeyes.
I still like Kentucky Fried Chicken when I have it. Anyways. Okay. I think we're losing the thread, but
yeah.
All right, so I think we've been pretty clear about who the current best team is, and we're playing with them right now. And we showed you the loadout, we showed you the levels, and where they're at. I think this is hard to beat, except the Flashpoint team that we used to use before this for our Q&C&A&T videos was also pretty good, and at this low level they're probably as good. If you wanted to max them out though, I think this team is better if you wanted to go higher to Elite 7 or Elite 10. But if we're looking at based on what you've got, it's actually not a bad team, except for Metahuman Flash. And the reason I say that isn't because Metahuman Flash is bad. He's actually really good.
Yeah, we like the Flashes.
But you're missing out on a bunch of the synergy. So Arkham Knight Batgirl can tag in and save any of her teammates. Arkham Knight Harley Quinn can do a bunch of... this is perfect. Arkham Knight Harley Quinn is right here. So there's a potential for punishing a tag-in, which almost all teams now do, to get the bars of power from Tantu Totem Master's Death card.
Yeah.
So it's a good Arkham team, but Arkham Knight Batgirl, her best feature is tagging in and saving somebody. So what you want is having any Arkham Knight character at the front to be your main damage dealer, and then when they are on the point of being knocked out, She tags in to save them, and when she tags in to save them, the best, because she's got a potential stun, what you really want to do, so in this case, because this is actually not a bad opponent team composition, because Gaslight Batman, I don't want to tag him in initially. Oh, this is going to be a bit of a pain. I don't want to tag him in right away or tag in Wonder Woman right away, because she's not going to get the second bar of power, and she's not going to be that effective. But Gaslight Batman is really the weak point. I want somebody in there ready to take him on. All right, so this is going to be not bad. Oh, perfect. Okay. So now I'm ready to take the chance, because when Wonder Woman tags in, she's going to have a second bar of power no matter what. And I wouldn't have minded if Arkham Knight Harley Quinn had done anything. But that was the weak point, because then I don't have to worry about, when I'm fighting Arkham Knight Batgirl, that she's going to save anybody. So for your first guy, instead of Metahuman Flash getting back to Colonel Sanders, Arkham Knight Batman I think would be a really good one, because he can be a really versatile tank and basic damage dealer and special specialist right off the bat. And if you have any kind of trouble at all, you've got Arkham Knight Batgirl. You give her either, you hope that you last long enough so she just naturally gains a bar of power, or give her Ra's al Ghul Scimitar for a bar of power, League of Assassins Knives, and Cloak of Destiny, so that she can really punish whoever was about to knock out Arkham Knight Batman.
So there we go. Thank you for your question, Mr. Sanders.
Colonel! Let's be respectful.
Yeah, you're
Colonel.
right. That's reductive.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Sanjay Mathew, and they say, so you've talked about your favorite books and podcasts, but do you watch a lot of TV shows? If so, what shows do you watch? And I would like to say, I've liked all the questions that we've gotten. I like this one because it has nothing to do with injustice, and for some reason this person has decided that it's worth asking us for just general recommendations about things, about other media to consume.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool, and I appreciate that. So yeah, we can talk about some shows that
So,
we
but
like.
I want to
also
talk about on a meta level.
We can talk about why we've recommended podcasts and books.
So here's the thing: there's orders of magnitude in the size of the audience for a movie or a TV show or a book or podcast, and I think books are really on the low end there.
Yeah.
Where there's lots of great books, but the difference between a successful book and a successful TV show is huge.
And same with podcasts.
I guess so, yeah. I'm not sure about the
Podcasts are
numbers.
like more in between. Podcasts are closer to like YouTube, and they tend to have just like a different margin for success inherently based off of the number of people involved and like the production costs and stuff being different.
Yeah, and so the likelihood that we recommend a book that somebody has not read is way higher than recommending a TV show or movie.
Yeah, because it's hard for a TV show or movie to be really, really obscure.
Right.
Because they inherently need to have been seen by a lot more people to even be considered failures.
Right. And if they're obscure enough, chances are we haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
And so that's the first part. But the second part also is that one of the things that we want to do is make a difference. So if all the people who watched a particular video where we made a book recommendation actually read the book, that would be a substantial number of readers. Like the bestsellers list, I think, if you in a week, if you sell like say 1,000 books, I think that's probably enough to get you on most of the bestsellers lists.
Yeah.
I
don't know the numbers exactly.
The print run, I think the print run for a first novel might be a couple thousand. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but I think in terms of order of magnitude, I think I'm pretty close. And like a bestseller, where it could be like 10,000. Like somebody who's famous and already is known and has a new book coming out, they might do a really big print run, and that would be considered large. So, I guess for those two reasons and the fact that we just like to read is why we've done more about books.
Yeah, so that's why we haven't previously answered the question. But we can do you one better, which is actually answering your question.
That's true.
So as far as stuff that we've been watching recently, there's a ton of stuff.
Right, so maybe
we're not going to get everything.
Let's break it down to say because there's shows that are on right now that are probably relatively popular. There's older shows that to me are like all-time favorites. Yeah. And then some things that are maybe even older and more, not so much obscure, but maybe not so much in the public eye, so they've probably been forgotten, but are definitely worth a look.
Yeah, and then there's a ton of stuff that just, like, I've binged, for example, that are good that I'm not going to remember.
Right.
So, I mean, new episodes for BoJack Horseman just came out. So
Right.
but I wouldn't say that normally. I wouldn't remember that.
Right.
But it was a really good show.
Yeah.
And if I'm just thinking about things that I binged, Death Note. One of the only animes that I've ever watched. That was
Right.
really
Right.
good and entertaining, but most of the time I wouldn't remember it. So there's a bunch of TV that we're gonna not talk about here. Like the first two
right.
seasons of Chuck. I'm trying to think of stuff that I wouldn't normally think to mention.
Oh, the first 2 seasons of Chuck were absolutely brilliant.
They were really, really good. And more than that, the reason why I remembered is because I've been listening to music from the first few seasons of Chuck. Because the
Right.
soundtrack is also pretty incredible.
The problem was that I guess to me, there's a lot of different styles of shows or tropes that are used
Yeah.
that fall apart a little bit. And one of those, not in Chuck, but the common one that is cited is one of those romance where it goes, will they, won't they?
Won't they? And you can only sustain that for so long.
Right, and eventually when they do, then it becomes a different kind of show.
Yeah.
And a lot of times because it's not the same thing, making the transition is really hard, and they don't always get it right because what they were good at before isn't what they're actually doing anymore.
The problem is that Chuck is a fish out of water story where they only move him to one other type of water, right?
Right.
His surroundings never change after the beginning. Right? They change in subtle ways, but it's never.
Right.
It's always the same genre, and this shouldn't be a spoiler, but it's like a spy show. So it's a
Right.
fish out of water spy story, and the fact that it keeps being a spy story means that after a certain point, he's not really a fish out of water. At this point, he's just somebody who used to be
Right.
awkward and is now a spy.
Right, but that was the best part of it.
Yeah.
To me, it was that the human quality where he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. He's in a situation that he's not comfortable with.
Yeah.
That was the best part of the show.
Yeah, so it couldn't stay the same show, and it lasted long enough that it wasn't the same show, and I think... I don't know if... I didn't finish watching it, so I don't ever know if it got, like, bad
I
inherently.
did. I finished watching it.
Yeah, but I know it definitely got less of what I initially signed up for.
I kept on watching it because of nostalgia. I mean, I wanted it to be what it was, but you know, it never got back. And they did some nice. They wrapped it up nicely in the last season, but the first 2 seasons were great.
Yeah.
And after that, it was, you know, if I started watching the 3rd season, I don't think I would have kept on watching it.
So we can talk about shows for a long time. I think we're talking about categories, recent stuff.
All right, yeah. So maybe we won't go so much into recent stuff because people can see that for themselves.
Yeah.
So what are we watching lately that we really like?
Better Call Saul. Brilliant show.
Yeah, I never even watched Breaking Bad, but I really like Better Call Saul.
I've watched Breaking Bad, and I think I can say confidently that I enjoy it more than Breaking Bad. And,
Better Call Saul, yeah.
Better Call Saul. And I think they're both, they make each other better for both existing in the world.
Right.
So that's really good. Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
9-9.
Yeah. I have binged it all the way through once, and then I did most of a second run with you.
I am almost through everything except for the last few episodes of the last season.
Yeah, we got like 4 left at this point.
Good Place.
The Good Place is really good. I have only watched part of season 2.
But is it really good or is it maybe bad? Okay, that's a joke. That's an in-joke if you actually watch the show.
But yeah, so Good Place is great. I think it's Michael Schur, same person who did Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Parks and Rec.
That's right.
Michael Schur is a
Parks and
name
Rec was
that is
great,
now
too.
super on my radar for good, really good like sitcom.
Right,
like,
the way
TV.
the way Edgar Wright is for movies.
Yeah, like I really trust.
Or Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, I really just trust the quality of work that they put out.
Even if it's not your favorite, it's just going to be something interesting, right?
And I think Brooklyn Nine-Nine is one of my favorite comedic shows. Period. Like,
Okay.
so like just, and it's up there with my favorites for stuff on TV.
All right, so I'm going to tell you what my favorite all-time... I don't even know if I want to categorize it as my favorite teenage detective story or my favorite drama ever or just really like a really good show. So, Veronica Mars.
Veronica Mars was really, really good. Kristen Bell, Good Place.
Yes, the first season was literally like a novel. It was self-contained. It had one big long story arc. It had a really satisfying conclusion. It left it open so they can continue the second and third season, which were good, but not great. The way the stakes, the emotional investment in that first season, was off the charts. It was so well done. It was funny. It was touching. It was clever. It was the perfect show.
Okay, now that we're talking about Veronica Mars, I just have to mention really quick the show on Netflix, American Vandal. I think iProphet mentioned really liking Serial.
Yeah.
So this is, for people who like Serial, American Vandal's really funny because it plays off a lot of the true crime tropes. But the idea is that instead of anything serious, it's like an AV club or something. I don't remember exactly the story. And
somebody was painting.
Somebody spray painted
phallic symbols?
Somebody spray painted a bunch of penises on cars in the teacher's parking lot.
It wasn't just penises.
No, it was just that.
Oh, there were no testes.
Oh, there were that. You're right. There were.
It was anatomically
male
correct.
genitalia.
That's right.
But so, and they use like actual proper like investigative journalism techniques. They do all the due diligence, and the joke is never a joke that somebody tells in the story. The joke is how serious they take it and how inherently funny the subject matter is. Like how inherently not serious the subject matter is and how serious they take it.
So it's like a dramatic irony where it's the audience that's getting the joke and the people in it are the joke, but they don't know that it's a joke.
Yeah, so they'll have like an artist's reconstruction of a scene and they'll, be like, and their actual like methods are good and like familiar to the kind of people who like stuff like Serial and like true crime stuff.
So I do want to point out though, because even though you mentioned last time, I listened to the whole first season of Serial with Adnan Syed's case, and I also listened to the follow up where there were some lawyers that were sort of tying up not loose ends, but just delving maybe a little bit deeper in some of the issues.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a great podcast.
Yeah, and I'm working on season 3 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, other shows that are great and classics. I think My So-Called Life is probably one of the best coming of age dramas.
Yeah.
And on another side of the die would be Freaks and Geeks, which was also great coming of age, but not so much dramatic, but sort of like a painful kind of humor that really gets to the dramatic elements too. Absolutely brilliant shows that both ended too quickly.
Something else that ended too quickly, Firefly. Firefly's a really good show. We love Firefly.
Yeah. I didn't even, because I made a list before we came to this question of stuff that I wanted to touch on. I totally forgot about Firefly.
That's the problem, is that there's so many different things that we could talk about, and we're definitely not going to be able to talk about all of those. But hopefully this is enough content that you'll be able to find something in here, in the list.
Okay. Classic TV show. Absolutely brilliant. Maybe the idea. Okay, so here's the thing. I saw a meme recently. I don't know if it's so much a meme, but like a Twitter thread where it's there's something wrong with you if something or whatever type of media, like a movie, show, whatever, is your favorite of that type.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that actually started that was Breaking Bad. If Breaking Bad is your favorite, or Rick and Morty, or were two of them are like your favorite shows.
So they're good shows, but I think what separates to me a good show from your favorite show, to me, I feel like there's got to be at least some element that you can identify with, whether it's because it's similar to you or it's something that you aspire to.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen Breaking Bad. I understand what it's about, and I'm imagining that if the way people say that about Breaking Bad is that there's no real good person in it. It's all kind of just bad.
Well, it's not true that there's no real good person in it. There are good people in the show. I think what they were saying is that if it's your favorite show, what that maybe indicates is that instead of being fascinated by the character study of Walter White, you identify a little bit with Walter White, and that would be a huge problem. That's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Because it's somebody who is really good at what they do, but what they do is totally ignore responsibility and morals and values and anything except for themselves, basically.
Right.
It's somebody being really inherently selfish, and not just selfish in the kind of like, I'm keeping what's mine. It's they're selfish at the expense of the people around them.
Right. Yeah. So we can appreciate the difference between a good show and our favorites. Like, all right, so for example, like Mad About You was one of my favorite shows when it was out. And I think part of it was I saw the relationship between Paul and Jamie, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the funniest show. At the time, I think Seinfeld was probably funnier.
Yeah.
And Friends was more popular. I think there was some overlap there. But it was something there's just a quality about it where they were a couple that I thought, I would like to be dating Helen Hunt. And And I thought that would be like a kind of cool relationship where you both have the sort of the freedom to be a little bit neurotic, but not dysfunctional. But all right, so a show that is one of my favorites, but also in my mind objectively a great show, Cheers. Especially the first season. It had a great run, but the first season when it was the Sam and Diane, this is the same thing, the will they or won't they, right?
Yeah.
And at that point it was still up in the air, but they had some really like funny jokes that were character driven. They weren't cheap. They could surprise you so much, and there was a real emotional investment in the characters in a way that if you don't see the show, I'm not going to spoil it, but you can't really get until you've spent a little bit of time watching the first few episodes. And it is Cheers, I think, holds up really well over time, and it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, apparently Friends hasn't held up super well. I've heard.
I haven't watched it since the first run.
I haven't watched it in the first run or really much after the first run. It's mainly the theme song that I'm familiar with, and various elements of the characters and character archetypes, like how you doing, like but I've heard apparently it hasn't aged super well, and I think it was specifically in reference to some sort of like the way that they would make jokes about things that were basically just homophobia.
Oh, okay.
Apparently that comes up. And again, I have no clue. This is just, I don't know why I've been given that impression, but I think I've been given that impression by more than one source.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And here's the thing. There's just so little time and so much stuff in the world that if there's even something that's got the hint of being problematic, it's difficult because it's got to grab our attention among all the other things that could.
Yeah, and I don't think something being problematic inherently makes it unconsumable as a piece of media, or even makes it bad to think it's a good piece of media. Yeah. Especially when you're considering how something's aged, understanding it in its context, thinking it's good, and this is another thing where it's a difference between it being your favorite and it being something that you recognize is really good, is that thinking it's good doesn't mean thinking it's perfect.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I think the main problem when something is problematic is that there's groups of people that won't be able to look past that and enjoy it, no matter how good it is. And I don't think you can blame them for it.
Right.
But it's also, I think, reasonable to be able to look past it.
So it depends on the audience you're recommending to, right? So if somebody who's got enough time to actually take a deep dive into the stuff and maybe binge it, that's one thing. But if somebody who doesn't, so let's say it's somebody who doesn't read a lot, then I know that if I'm going to recommend a book, I need to make sure it counts.
Yeah, you don't want to recommend something that's just okay if this is like the only book they're going to read this year.
Right.
Or this decade. Or
Speaking of books, we just came back from Montreal, and we were at Joe Walton's Scintillation Convention.
Oh, yeah, that was really cool. That was a lot of fun. Here's one thing that we can recommend to people who maybe are or have been in Montreal, are or will be in Montreal. There's a place called the Noodle Factory, which is delicious.
It's on St. Urbain. It's on the same street as the Holiday Inn Centerville, Montreal. They have handmade noodles.
Yeah, and the food there is incredible. But that wasn't the point of going to Montreal. We weren't there for the noodles. We saw a bunch of panels, talked to a bunch of really cool, interesting people.
Oh my god! There was a panel on good versus evil, and they, besides just the topic and the stuff they covered, I couldn't believe just how smart these people were, and how well spoken they were.
Yeah,
and they had such great ideas, and were able to articulate them so well. And it was not just like it wasn't just simple stuff. It was really like
high level stuff. Yeah,
a lot of whoa moments, right? Where you think, oh
yeah,
wow, that is, I didn't see that before. Like big revelations.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
And related to gaming, I got to pick somebody's brain a little bit about who worked at Ubisoft Montreal.
Watch Dogs 2.
Watch Dogs 2. They worked on Watch Dogs 2. They worked on the newest Assassin's Creed game, among, I think, other Assassin's Creed games. They've worked on, what was it? Far Cry. The Far Cry series. I don't know which one. So I got to talk with them a little bit. And so it was really, really cool. But it looks like we're out of content here. We got to just barely mention it. The flashlights will have to wait.
Yeah, all right. The flashlights will wait. But I want to say, actually, if there's even a chance that Joe Walton's listening, I want to say, man, that was great. Thank you so much. And if you you, the viewers, ever have a chance to go to one of the conventions that Joe Walton does in Montreal, you need to grab it.
And you might see us.
You might see us. You'll definitely meet a bunch of really interesting people. She collects people the way other people collect books and comics, but she collects people that are just really interesting and smart. And well, they're more articulate than I am because I can't even think of the words to describe just how varied and experienced and influential these people are.
Now, that's something to be excited about, but there's something else that I think we need to be excited about here in this space at the end of our video, which is how great our patrons are. We have some wonderful patrons, and among them are Eddy G, Edwin Felix, and Console Peasant, who are supporting us at the highest last word tier. We have iProphet, who is supporting us at the Your Message Here tier, and we have Shawn, Farrell, and Daniel Simonson, who support us on the credited level. Thank you guys so much, and thank you so much to all of our viewers for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Komoda.